Okay. And three, two, one. Good day. My name is Kendall McBroom, a pastor in the Western North Carolina Conference of the African Methodist Episcopal Church in the second district of the AME Church. And I have with me this day Miss Kendra Ross, who is a survivor of human trafficking and who is more than that, a conqueror. And so we're going to jump in and have a conversation about what we can do as the church and what we can do as people of the diaspora to keep human trafficking from continuing and securing our young people and our youth and as well as our adults from that system. Kendra, thank you so much for being with us this day. And I'm just going to let you tell us a little bit about your story, and then from there, we'll have some questions.
Okay. Uh, Thank you for having me, um, and thank you for bringing awareness to the trafficking situation. Um, it's very important. So my story began when I was 2 years old, but the trafficking really started when I was 11, like after my family moved from Atlanta, Georgia to Kansas City. Um, and um, uh, so I lived, I lived in Kansas. I lived in this household with a lot of members of this organization. It was a religious based organization, kind of an offshoot of the Nation of Islam. Um, and uh, basically, myself and all the other members were working for free for the head of this organization, who claimed to be the reincarnation of God. Um, and we were told that what we were doing was building God's nation, and um, that we would all be saved by doing this and committing to his beliefs and everything. It was all about him. So I worked from age 11 until I escaped at age 21. Um, and um, it's kind of hard to identify the type of trafficking that I was a victim of. It was labor trafficking. So to the outside world, we looked like anybody, like we were just working, but there were some signs, like for the younger people, the younger youth who were a part of this organization, we were working during school hours. We should have been in school with the other kids, but we were working every day, all day. Um, and we lived in like a normal community. We had neighbors who weren't a part of the organization. For example, the first house that I lived in when my family, my mom, my sister, and I moved to Kansas, there was a girl who lived next door who was around my sister and I's age. And we weren't able to go play with her or talk to her at all. We weren't able to talk to anyone who wasn't a part of the organization. Um, so, I mean, that's another sign, being isolated and unable to communicate or interact with anyone who wasn't a part of that group. Um, and that is basically just how it was for over a decade of my life, not being able to, and also being shut off from my relatives, who were not a part of it, like my grandma, my aunts and uncles, etc. Um, so that's basically my life. I mean, it was the same things every day, and like just working. I did go to the organization school, which wasn't a real school. It wasn't an accredited school. The teachers were members of the organization, um, and they pretty much just taught what they were good at. Like if someone was good at math, they were the math teacher, science, all the other subjects, but we really didn't learn any of like what normal children were learning in schools. Most of our curriculum was um, about we were learning the leaders' teachings, basically. It was all very, uh, yeah, it was all about him. Like that's what he wanted us to have in our mind. And um, that's pretty much it. Like my life was just working, and I was also pulled out of school when I was out of that school when I was 15 to work more full time um, in the restaurants. Their businesses were they're spread out all over the country,
Mhm.
um, and um, I lost my train of thought.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, I was working before I was pulled out of school. I was working. Um, like I would go to one of the businesses to work. I worked at the diner that they had in Kansas. I
Mhm.
would go there and prep and do all that like restaurant stuff before the transportation would come pick me up to take me to school, and all the other youth who also worked before school. And then after school, we'd go back to work to operate the restaurants or the other businesses that they had. So, I mean, it was a pretty structured environment that we had, um, structured and secluded or isolated from the rest of the world. But it's kind of tricky to identify red flags other than with the children, like what I mentioned earlier with school age children working all day and every day, and not having a normal childhood. Um, do you have any
Yeah.
questions for me?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that layout and really rundown. You mentioned and again, thank you for taking the time to share. Um, you mentioned about kind of labor trafficking, and I think that's very important because oftentimes when we think about human trafficking, we think only regarding like sex trafficking and things of that nature, but it's so much more, it's so much broader. And so I guess one of my questions would be, um, even if we don't see children maybe working in a restaurant or working in a place, what are some other signs that we can be observant of or be tuned into? um yes, them not being in school, but what are some other things that we might be able to be aware of?
Well, one of the things that was a norm in the organization that I was in was that we weren't allowed to go to hospitals or doctors outside of the organization. Um, so a lot of injuries would go untreated.
Hmm.
Um, or, I mean, there was like one doctor who I believe did go to school to become a doctor before he joined the organization. So he was the main doctor for everyone. He delivered all the children, treated some things. But it was just one of him and hundreds and hundreds of followers and all over the place. So there were a lot of people who didn't get health care or get injuries taken care of. I was one of those people. One of my friends who was a part of it, she actually passed away. There were a few other people who passed away um, while a part of this because of being neglected. So I would say another red flag is like seeing people, not just children or young adults, but anyone who's just like have injuries that are not being treated. And um, let's see, other red flags. No, just being fearful, just seeing people who look like they're constantly afraid, um, or being extra, like trying to be extra perfect with what they're doing because they're afraid of the repercussions for doing something wrong. And I'm speaking from my own experiences, but it was a little different. Like we were taught to hide our emotions,
Mhm.
and um, so, for example, when I was also moved around the country to work in the various businesses that this organization had. And when I was 16, I was moved to Atlanta, Georgia to work in the restaurant there. And I was there for about 4 months before I was sent away because I was obviously not happy there. Like I was separated from my mom and my siblings very
Mhm.
early, shortly after we moved to Kansas. So I was away from my family. I knew the people who I lived with and who I worked with because we were all a part of the same group and we're growing up together and doing all the things together. But it was still like not my family. They're
Mhm.
not my blood. So I was unhappy and it showed. I had a hard time covering that up,
Mhm.
my sadness, my anger. So, and at like month 4, I was sent away, sent back to Kansas, which was the headquarters of the whole organization. I was sent back because I did not have the proper spirit. I was showing the community or people, customers who came in, and the customers were people from the community who were not a part of the organization.
Mhm.
But I was showing them that I was not happy. So I was sent away because of that. So I guess that could be another red flag too, like
Yeah.
people being there one moment and just gone the next.
Mhm.
Um, but it's still kind of tricky because it's like that in any other job that people get. Like I work at a grocery store right now, and the turnover rate is crazy.
Right.
So like that could, someone being there one moment and gone the next could be attributed to like a turnover. So it's kind of, it's it's really difficult to kind of to tell with labor trafficking.
Mhm.
um
Okay. So
yes.
so thank you for that. Another question I have is because you mentioned that this was a religious adjacent institution. And so with the religious side of that, right? What are some signs there? I know you mentioned, they were saying that they were the incarnation. And so what are some like theological or religious signs that we can look out for if, say, our children or grandchildren um find themselves or come into contact with an organization like that? What would be some signs to look out for?
I would say the number one sign is like someone who's claiming to be the almighty God.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big red flag there. Um, just stay away from that.
Right.
That was kind of the main, that's kind of the main sign there.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I can think of. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's how that was the ruse.
Yeah.
And someone claiming that they could save you from death. Like these are all the things that this leader was saying. Like he's God, he could heal all sicknesses, he
Mm-hmm.
could stop people from dying, and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Those were the kinds of things that got people drawn in
Mm-hmm.
to it. And I would just say be on the lookout for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. And I mean, that makes perfect sense. I mean, um, I think anytime that a human or an individual is like you said, placing themselves as the Almighty or this individual who can is placing themselves or stating themselves as someone who can do all of these things, we must be cautious of that. And I don't know about you, but I feel like that in this day and age is really prevalent, because people are looking for something. They're looking for healing. They're looking for salvation in all of its forms. And so definitely I think sharing that is powerful to be on the
Yes,
lookout for.
and that just reminded me. So it's especially true for the more vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
people. Like my mom, for example. My mom was 27,
Mm-hmm.
26 or 27 when she joined this organization. She was a single mother of 5 children.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she was struggling. Like before we moved to Kansas, we were struggling a lot, like living in and out of shelters, um, just poor basically. And she admitted to me later on in life that she was ready to give up and she was going to uh, kill herself and she was going to kill us as well. But
Mm-hmm.
she met this man who was kind of working for the leader. Like they'd go around handing out flyers to have people. They were basically recruiting people to join, people who were in vulnerable situations, like my mom, or maybe people who were running from the law, or just vulnerable people in
Right.
general. And those people are very susceptible to joining something like that because they see no other way out of their situation. And that was the case for my mom, who was struggling really hard to raise 5 children on her own and was just basically at the end. And this person she met presented her with these ideas that sounded pretty good.
Right.
Um, and that's what she wanted, something different, a better life for herself and her children. So she joined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's, thank you for that. Thank you. Because I think that's key too, to be um as the church, to be to to stand at, or as a religious institution, um knowing that we offer people hope, but it's a fine line, right? It's a delicate balance, in the sense of, um we might not can change everything in one day, but we trust, and we as individuals, as humans, can't. We do know a God that can turn things around, but definitely balancing that, our role in that and God's role in that, I think is key. um God's role in turning things around, and then us being God's work people to help move that along, but not being, as you said earlier, not being the Almighty, and not being the giver of life, or the giver of healing, the giver of blessings. That's just not who we are, as humanity and as people. So I have just one final question. um how was how as you know as you were brought out from that, in the court case and all those things, how has the journey to healing been, and how has the journey to um yeah, how has the journey for of healing and restoration been for you and your family?
It has been a very rocky road. It has been pretty difficult, actually.
Mhm.
I have a lot of trauma that I'm still healing through. Like there was a lot of abuse within this organization, so I'm still healing through all of that, and it's just being a part of that um, has ruined my family.
Mhm.
So we're not close, and as close as I would like for us to be. And so my family is still working on that, like
Mhm.
getting our family bond back. Um, but I mean, I have been in therapy for the past like 7 years now, and
Mhm.
that's been a tremendous help for me. Um, and just having a strong support system um, has been helpful as well. Uh, I have, um, right, I already said that, that I have a strong support system.
Mhm.
Uh, and I mean, it hasn't been easy. I felt like an outsider when I first left because I was accustomed to the basically the customs of the organization. Um, so it was really difficult to um, adapt to this new society. I felt because I the last public grade I finished was the fifth grade before I was sent to the other school in Kansas.
Mhm.
So I kind of felt like I wasn't smart enough or didn't want to interact with other people because they think that, or people around my age because they, you know, think that I was weird or something. But um, that whole finishing at the fifth or not, or being taken out of school at the fifth grade, that kind of doesn't matter because I'm pretty smart.
Right.
uh, I always loved learning things,
Mhm.
so I pretty much taught myself everything I know. I mean, I'm in college now. I got my GED.
Mhm.
I'm in college at the moment. I'm um, in the honor society. I'm doing pretty well. I live on my own. I have lots of friends, lots of support. So I think that just having people by my side, um, people who understand me um, and want to help me, that's been very beneficial for me. I feel like I probably wouldn't be here today if I didn't have just all these wonderful people on my side, and um, especially like my lawyers who, well, the people who I moved to a safe house when I
Mhm.
first moved here to Virginia.
Okay.
Once I told my story to my therapist, and she got me connected with a bunch of people who could get me help for my situation.
Mhm.
And once I ended up moving into a safe house that was geared towards helping victims of human trafficking. And they got me connected with my therapist, with doctors, with lawyers, and my lawyers helped me bring this case to light and just expose everything.
Yeah.
So that's been a blessing.
That's awesome. I mean, that's awesome. And to see you today, and not, having just met you, but just seeing where you are today and hearing your story and knowing a bit of what you've gone through um, is a testament to both human perseverance, but God's God's blessings in the midst. How you are able to navigate and live, and truly live life, the life that you have for yourself, the life that you've envisioned for yourself. Um, that's a blessing, and it speaks volumes. It's spoken to me today. I want to say that it is truly spoken to me today. Um, the resilience of the human spirit, I think is something that we can't take for granted. um, and how community can be of aid, how community can really be of aid in that in that resilience, the need for community to really bounce back. So I want to just say again, thank you for your time and for sharing with us. You've given us some really good tips as far as what to look out for. School age children out who should be in school, um, moving from place to place. If someone is there one moment, gone the next. Granted, in this economy, we know that might be common, but I'm sure that there's like probably a feeling that comes up if you feel like something is not right. And so going with that feeling, going with that gut, in a safe way, but as well as in a advocate way, in an advocating way. So Kendra, thank you so much. And we hope to, if there's ever anything that you need from us as the AME Church or as the Second Episcopal District, I don't know if I have the liberty to say that, but I think that knowing our servant Bishop James L. Davis and Mother Aurelis Davis, and the clergy within the Second Episcopal District, will be here to stand with and advocate any way that we can, as community and as community. So thank you again, and thank you, Bishop Davis, for this opportunity to bring this to light. And we pray that the rest of our annual conference would go well. Thank you, Kendra.
You're welcome. Thank you.